Two tickets for the tour.
All right, what's the last name? Lynley?
Yep.
Okay, 1 and 2. Okay, and there's your buttons. And
okay.
head over to Pavilion, and that's how she knows you're part of the crew.
Okay, thank you.
And he's making a new batch.
We're gonna go to the Pavilion.
I have backyard.
My name is Wendy, and this is Schuylkill Lavender Farm. Anybody been here before? Raise their hand. Are you on the farm tour, folks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Come on in. There's some seats up here up front, or you can grab some chairs for in the back if you'd like. We're going to be here for a good half hour. We're not starting off walking away, so if you want to sit down, you can. And we bought this farm, literally bought the farm in 2004. I'm going to go over a little bit of a history on the farm, just to give you an idea, and I'm going to go over how to grow lavender, the different types of lavenders, what you can do with it once you get it to grow. Has anybody come to this tour going, I need to know this? And yes, what do you need?
I need to know how to grow. I've been failing in growing lavender.
Okay, well, we'll make you succeed. Where are you from?
Philadelphia.
Philly. What part of Philly? Not there? Okay, cool. Yeah, it's not too far. I always ask the Philly question. Anybody else here from Philly? I always do this joke in the farm store. I always say, what part of Philly? And they'll give me a town. I go, I went to school in Bryn Mawr, and they go, oh. And then I go, Markham, and they go, oh. Oh, no, Markham. Hey, you know that one? How do you know that one? Huh? I'm from White Marsh. I know that one. Because I had a friend that went to Markham. Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I had, when my father passed, my estate lawyer was a Villanova grad. Well, he really knew that saying. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All girls. So, yeah, that's my funny about Philly. So, what I am going to do is I'm going to talk about these things. Any other burning questions besides knowing how to grow it? So, I'm going to start. I started doing this before I started. Get your button, and people go, I don't want this corny button. Save it. Small Business Saturday, anybody that comes in with their and shops and makes a purchase of $25 more gets a free lip balm with their little store button. So, because I had one lady goes, I don't want this stupid button. It helps me know who's on the tour. Because it's not fair if other people wander up and they kind of get in on it. You pay $5. I want to make it worth your money. Well, this is the other part. You get a lavender cookie. You will learn as we talk. There's 2 different types of lavender. Okay? There's a lavender that makes soaps and lotions and oils and such that you use in soaps and lotions. And then there's one that you use in food. This is the one in food. And I'm going to give it to you now before I touch things. I just wash my hands and I want to get to you before I touch something, like a plant. And you can try it. You're not eating soap. Rub with your hand and not touch your hand if you haven't noticed. It's not like, I'm like, ew. I'm just trying not to, because I want to go around to everybody. So if you take a peek and look at it before you eat it, you'll see the purple stains. I have baked brownie recipes, and I have put lavender just directly on top, and it stays purple. So it doesn't brown, you know, it doesn't get a dingy, ugly color. So it's kind of
Would you eat it?
So I always tell people, lavender has staying power in smell and in color. It wants to stay purple and it wants to stay smelling good. Are you part of the farm tour?
Yes.
Did you check in yet?
No.
Well, stay on it now and then check in at the end. You get a little button, and as I explained to this group, the button means you're on the tour, and then it also means that when you come back, if you put it on, I'll know you're a lavender expert, and you can put your name on it, and I'll, you know, you've been on the tour, and I'll know your name. Huh? Sure. Don't you want one? Oh, okay. Do you want some lavender water sprayed on your hands? Do you want my cookie? Huh? Okay. And then also at Small Business Saturday last year, we did a $25 or more purchase. You come in with your little button, you get a free lip balm. So it's actually $5, so you get your money back on your tour. At the small business Saturday. People go in and go, I'm here for my free lip balm after the tour. No, it's for Small Business Saturday. You wouldn't believe how clear you have to be about things, right?
Teaches me not to do tours.
You have to dance.
I do.
Neon room.
That's it. I remember doing Neon Moon with you down all the way. What was the name of the one that's not now in town, or Quakertown anymore?
Oh my God. Well, that's okay.
We bought a farm of 33 acres with 7,000 Christmas trees. I think that's the number. I have a beautiful laminated thing that I don't stand up and hold it. I always forget some of the stats, but I believe it was 7,000 Christmas trees. And so it was 33 acres, 7,000 Christmas trees. There was no mention of the house that we live in. And the joke is that the trees were worth more than the house. There was no, the Christmas trees had more worth behind them than the house. So they literally listed it as land, and there were no fences, no, everything here was not here but that house. Are you ladies part of the farm tour?
Yeah.
Or did you check in already?
No.
Okay, you're fine. Just stay on it. Let me get you your little cookie card before we start. Everybody that's doing it gets this free sample of a cookie. So we bought the farm, and literally there were no other buildings on it. We used to have an old shed that we had to take down on this property, and we put in a barn that was bigger than our house. And that was 2004, and realized the lavender did not start until the idea for the lavender, 2010. That plethora anifolia. I always tell people I'm very into native plants, and there are seeds down here, ladies. We're going to be here for about a good, well, there's, like, you want to sit down here. There's chairs back here if you want to sit. Because I normally do the tour here, and then we walk off and see stuff. Because if I walk around talking, somebody's going to miss hearing stuff. Okay? So, and you can't hear me back there, right? I am using my school bus driver voice. It can get louder, but I'm using my school bus driver voice. So we just lived here. We bought the farm to bring 2 horses home. That was our only goal. We did not want to be a lavender farm. And our driveway has improved a lot. This used to be the joke, was you have driven up our driveway. It used to be 1 lane, and it was a lot more tree encased. We took down about 33 trees a couple of years ago and widened the driveway. So back in the old days, at the beginning of the farm, I would always joke and say, you did see our driveway. We did not start this place to be a lavender farm. So we bought the farm, literally played with the horses, did our thing, and then the Christmas trees. We leased them off to a tree farmer. They started going away. What are we going to do with all this land? And in the Northeast, probably a lot of, but in the Northeast, if you leave land go, and I learned this doing the Master Gardener program, it's liking to go into a forest. I mean, it knows, like, I want to be a forest. Let me build up trees. So if we would have just let this all go, by now we probably would have a lot of understory and enough small trees. And I hike the mountain behind this house to know how quick they grow up. Like, because they'll do clear cuts up on the Weiser State Forest, and how fast these trees will fill in a forest. My husband loves to work all the time, I say. He loves to work all the time. We had our horses at a barn. He used to help a guy with hay. He wanted to do something. Well, you see the lay of the land. And a lot of you can't appreciate what I see when I do this tour. But you see the slope this way. I stand here looking at this way, and the whole land goes like this. So the land leans this way, it leans this way, and what's funny is we go back out to meet the animals, it goes back to this direction. And so we put them in the ground because we have weird land. We have those deer that eat everything, but they don't eat lavender. And the one other great perk to lavender was, two, no expensive farm equipment, and it doesn't need chemicals to grow. There really isn't any pesticides or herbicides or things you're spraying on. This stuff is all grown without that. It doesn't have anything that really wants to do. The Japanese beetle you'll see on it, we have a trap. It's more unsightly. They don't do damage. You get spittlebug in the spring. It looks a little weird. It looks like a bug spit on a plant. You just spray it off with the leaf blower and it goes away. It doesn't cause damage to the plant. But there's nothing that, is eating it. It's not like a rose. I'm not a rose grower at all, but I know, anybody here a gardener? I should have asked that question. Any gardeners? Like rose, anybody do roses a little? No. You do? You know what I'm saying, roses are? they're little, if you can grow roses, you can grow lavender. Yeah, you're good. You're good. You'll know how to do it. So that was one of the perks to us. We didn't have to work with all the chemicals to try to keep it happy. So we started off with our 4 cultivars, and we started small. We didn't build a farm store. I mean, we started seriously small. We put our 1,500 plants in the ground on Memorial Day of 2011, and that was on the right side of the greenhouse. Those plants, is that a carpenter bee? Or a bat? They look big. It could be a bat. Because with all the wood, you get a lot of the carpenter bees. Carpenter bees, FYI, do not sting. They just look giant. It looks like a carpenter bee. Yeah. Huh? Yeah? Veterinary technician for 25 years. Everything was biting. Okay? Like, not everything, but if it was a patient and it was unhappy, I might get bit. I didn't get stung by it. It was like, change your vernacular. You got stung. But so you're saying they actually bite?
Yeah.
Okay. I always understood they bang off you. Like we have them up by our barn. Like, they'll literally like bang off your head and fly away. It's really weird.
That's what
So
old
I
tennis
sticky
rackets
trap them. FYI, sticky traps were great. I just catch them and they're done. But anyhow, back to lavender. So we put the lavender in 2011 and we watched it grow. First year you don't do much because it just grows. First year lavender plants sleep. They don't do much. Most perennials. Lavender is a perennial. It's an herb. It's a shrub. It falls into a lot of categories. So the shrubby part is what makes it weird to prune and what happens sometimes for people. So we planted those plants and we watched them grow. We did nothing. The second year we might have cut a few flowers home and did a few bouquets. And I think we sold them to a local farmer that had a farm, and she sold them as dried bouquets. And then it was just a gradual process, and then we bought a little green cart and we roll it out here in our side yard, and we have like sachets on it. So it was a real slow, and then it grew, and we bought a still. So probably by like the 3rd or 4th year, we were distilling for oil. I don't recommend it if you have 10 plants. If you have a couple thousand, yeah, but because it takes, the French lavender we're doing, it takes 15 pounds approximately of flowers to make 1 ounce of oil. Wow. That's the French. And you know how I told you with the cookie, some of that came in the end, didn't hear this? The English lavender, which you're going to learn the right words for, the Latin, and is for cooking, typically. The French lavender is for the distilling and the soaps and lotions. So you weren't eating soap when you ate your cookies. The English lavender, if you distill that, and we do, that takes 45 pounds of flowers to make 1 ounce of oil. So you don't take distilling lightly. You don't do it in the backyard. You keep your plants and you cut them as bouquets, dried bouquets, sachets, things like that. So we started slow. Our goal, we were going to make oil and we were going to sell it to soap makers. So we saw that ratio. Then we learned how to make soap. So everything in that farm store now we make. We started with a little green cart. A year or two later, we needed more space. We built a purple cart. We built our drying shed so we could dry stuff. Then we got tired of running back to the main barn every time it rained, and we had guests. We weren't as many hours or as organized. Believe it or not, this is organized. We were way unorganized in the beginning. Like, we had people come and we didn't have a map. We'd be like, yeah, sure, go up. Figure it. Yeah, you can go over there, go over here. Like, we gradually learned some stuff as we did, And we still don't have it perfect, and I still every year come up with things I want to do. By next year, I want to put a walking trail down around the whole bottom part of the property that's marked, like, here's the purple post. Stay to the left of it, so you're not walking through the pollinator field, because that's a pollinator field the first 2 acres. So we don't want people plucking flowers and killing our flowers. So that's a goal. And also doing like little trivia things, like small things that you would want to know about the farm. Like it was started in 2004, we bought it, and put them up as posts that people can follow, like almost like a little walking guided tour they can do themselves. So we started off very unorganized. In a way, because we didn't know what we were doing. And then we would do a festival every year. Every woman goes and goes, I'm going to a lavender festival, yay! And they get all excited. Yeah, it went really well for 5 years, and I think it was the 6th year it went viral on Facebook, and it said 10,000 people were coming. I kid you not. And our driveway was before improvement, so it was 1 lane wide. And I looked up at one point, it's June, it was at the equinox. It was like 90 degrees. I'm walking around, these ladies walking around with their bags on. No one dies, God. I promise I will never do this again. Don't let anybody get hurt. I will never do it again. We didn't have this building. No one got hurt. I said, when we were done, I mean, people, we had the 10,000 people coming, and then I panicked and said, we're not doing it this way. We got to fix things up. We did a little free ticket, 3,500 tickets. Some people couldn't make it because we ran out of tickets, free tickets. You should have seen the nasty messages I got. It's one of the reasons we don't have Facebook Messenger on Facebook. I hope it'll. And I said, we wouldn't do it. Troy said, let's build a building. I'm like, that's too much money. No. We'll do most of the work ourselves. Oh, okay. Sure, why not? So we had the outdone of the building, like the framework is done and stuff. So it truly has a hayloft, a main floor, and it has a basement floor. So if it rained today, we would have been in the bottom of the bank line. And so it's nice and it's amazing because we used to work out of our tack room, which was like 5 feet, 6 feet wide, but like 12 feet deep. Yeah, I don't know how we did it because we have every floor has something in there, every corner, everything. But we got the lavender farm started, and then Troy got into beekeeping. So the beekeeper guy is getting kicked out. We just put a building in up there for him to get his stuff in because he keeps bees, and that requires a lot of stuff. Anybody here a beekeeper? Starting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's about, we probably will, I have a July. I always tell people, the main guy here that we're distilling for oil, that you want to see the rows and rows that we still have left. The color just isn't as brilliant. 4th of July. Think fireworks, think lavender. That's when it looks brilliant. The English lavender that's in food, June, mid-June. The French lavender, beginning of July. Okay, so that is when this one's in full bloom. And I'm going to walk around and show you a flower here. Before we walk around, you can't see outside because it's brighter and such. These are the flowers that are open. You're going to see little brown specks on them. They are the flowers that wilted. They were open, they wilted, and they're drying and falling off. But that is the little lavender flower. The color that also will look nice and it's not as brilliant, that would be what a bud kind of looked like when it was closed. But it's not anymore because they have bloomed and they're done. But it could be, it looks similar. It's like a little grain of rice. When they're closed, that's a lavender flower open. So when they're in full bloom, it's kind of hard to tell when they're in full color from full bloom. It's all purple. It's just it's a little bit more brilliant. But that is a flower in full bloom. You can see it open. The grains of rice are before they open. So when you get your lavender grown, I got it grown. It's in full sun, good drainage. It likes where it's living. You want to cut it for culinary, for dried bouquets. You want to cut it before all the flowers open. So you're going to cut it when most of these little purple grains of rice are closed and just a few flowers are open. Yeah. And they're very pretty. There are 5 petals, so you'll see some of the earrings I found in there from a made in the USA jeweler. Everything in the farm store is made by us, local artists are made in the USA. And I found her when we were in the Grand Tetons this year, and they're 5 petals. And it reminded me of lavender, so I started buying the brilliant. So there you can see the little open flowers, the grains of rice that are purple. So you want to cut for your culinary, your dried bouquets. You want to retain that flower looking pretty later forever. Lavender can be dried. For sachet material, you want to do it mostly when the flowers are closed. There's the ones open, and there's the little flowers closed. So you'll see it when it starts looking purple on the plant and such. Wait for a few flowers to open, and then that's when you want to cut it. See the closed? And then you'll see the opens. It's kind of neat. It's really tiny. It's amazing how minuscule that flower is, but it's when they're all open together. There's the grain of rice, and there's all the purple flowers. So we know how to get it to grow. Kind of know when to cut it. Now we're going to learn a little bit about the different kinds of lavender.
This a quick question about that.
Yeah.
Distilling. So when the buds are starting to go backwards, that they're dying off, does that taint the oil at all?
No, it doesn't taint the oil. The thing that makes the oil not the best is if you get a lot of green material in it. We'll always say it tastes a little herbier if you get too much green. You'll see them up there, it terrifies me. It's the one job I say I'm not smart enough to do because I'll cut off a finger before I'll cut it. In the olden days, we had crazy friends. We sat around with little baskets, I kid you not, around a picnic table, cutting flowers off, one by one. Now, you'd grab handfuls, as much as the scissors could cut. Now, realize the culinary that we cut, that I cut, that I'm pretty much the predominant culinary cutter, because it's done with scissors, and I rub a random I probably did about 800 bundles this year or more. I had a little help for a couple, so we went up over probably 1,000, but I did about 800. I do them all by hand, and we cut it, we dry it. Drying shed, it takes about 3 weeks on good weather days when it's not real humid and such. 3 weeks for it to dry. Then I take it down after the lavender harvesting season, and then I clean it off on a screen and get all the buds off. And then I run it through the seed cleaner and gets rid of all this chafe, all that loose stuff. It still stays purple. Lavender wants to stay purple. So that all comes off, and that's how we get our culinary. Now, if you're cooking at home with it, you can use it fresh, you can use it dried. It doesn't matter. You can use a little more if you're using it dry, a little less. Depends on how you look at it. You can use it fresh. It's a 1 to 3. So if you're using 1 teaspoon of fresh, you technically would use 3 teaspoons of dried. Wait, I always do this wrong. It's the other way around. The other way around. 1 teaspoon of, or 3 teaspoons of fresh is 1 teaspoon of dried. Sorry, it's always less. And where it doesn't make sense is because it's all, the oils get concentrated in the dried flour. So you want to use less dried material, more fresh. But I honestly think 3 teaspoons of fresh lavender is way too much too. I would stick even Steven, but that's just me. So you can harvest it and sit there and get all the buds off and use it in your foods and eat it. Lavender is in the mint family. So this is where we'll get into the Latin terms, okay? Lavender is in the, I think it's Laminaceae, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, family. So it has a square stem. So it is in the mint family. It tastes a little bit different than eating a mint, but it has, if you feed it to somebody, they're like, it was something, but I don't know what it was. Okay? And the reason I tell you that, because there's some hoity-toity lavender farmers out there that if you just call it English, they'll be like, no, 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 because you're going to confuse people. You go to another country, they may refer to English lavender differently. It's kind of like the layman's terms that we have for some plants. I'm trying to think, like I know I call it the money plant because when I was a kid, that's what my baba called it, but it's honesty. It's those little, look like little silver coins. It has like several names. So you want to give the correct name so that if somebody wants to find it, like hydrangeas, there's the arborescens, the paniculatas, that's their species. Like there's the hydrangea paniculata, that's like the PG, I think, hydrangea. And I went looking for one. I wanted the big huge heads. I needed to ask for that plant or I was just going to get a hydrangea. So with lavenders, lavandula angustifolia is the English. That's the one you use for cooking. Lavandin intermedia, that is the French intermedia. That's this guy, the grosso. That is the one for oils, bouquets. And you can use the English for bouquets, but it's shorter. Its stem is like usually half the length, but it's a darker color. Lavender, the French lavenders are typically true like light lavender color. They're not as strong of a color. We're going to go for a walk and we're going to see our dried lavender, or dried, it is dried now, the bed of cultivars. Cultivar is the fancy name for saying the different type of lavender. That's all it means, it's a different type. I went to a lavender conference in 2015 for the first one, and I asked the guy that named one of the plants we sell, Melissa. He named it after his wife. I said, you get it, the lavender god, you gotta ask him, what's your favorite lavender? What's your favorite variety of lavender? And he looked at me, he goes, first off, they're cultivars, okay? And he comes back and he'll prune. I always say he, because I try to ignore after I harvest, and then maybe Troy comes in and prunes it. Because we go and trim it again, because we propagate all our plants from here, all the plants in our farm. You go 2 inches above the dead woody part. See how it looks dead? That plant looks dead, doesn't it? It looks pretty gross underneath. But when it looks like that, you can go, when you walk around, you can pull these plants back. They all look like that underneath. The green grows out of the top. So in the spring, it's going to look pretty bad some years. And you just have to wait, usually till the beginning of June, to see life in it. So yeah. So I always tell people when they call, like, I'm like, if you need the hole, dig it out. Otherwise, hang on. The first year, I think we dug out 400 cultivars at Munstead thinking they were dead. I think we just didn't know enough.
When do you propagate and divide, or do you not divide your lavender?
You do not divide lavender because it's a woody shrub. So that's where I was saying lavender is weird, where it's a perennial, it's an herb. There's perennials that I've learned this fancy term in the last few years. I apparently didn't pay attention in master gardener classes. Herbaceous lifespan. I used to think perennial meant forever, but it doesn't. So We have Barossa is our main distilling oil. Our culinary ones are Buena Vista, I know the English, Mayette's, Croxton's Wild, Royal Velvet, Purple Bouquets. They all have beautiful names. They'll be in quotes, little quotes behind the Lavandula angustifolia or Lavandin intermedia. They are the different types of cultivars of lavender. And we have some fun ones. Melissa Lilac, Melissa Pink, that was the gentleman that said call them cultivars. He named them after his wife. So it's fun. They are a lot of interesting plants. The way they grow, the way they survive, and the way they mystify people. Because a lot of people come and go, I can't grow it. And then they'll be like, it died after 12 years. I'm like, no, you're an expert. Because any book I've read, they say they live about 8 years. And the reason you want to prune them is to keep them in shape. So if you don't, they get really leggy and weird. Even if you prune them sometimes, they get strange. This lavender up here, somebody's like, what are you going to do with it? Besides, every once in a while, I put him back in place, and then he looks kind of cool. This one, the one part broke off, so I creatively pruned it. And so if he doesn't get blown over, he doesn't look bad. That's Higcote Giant. This is Higcote Giant. That is a French lavender. Some people know Higcote as English, correct? Like any gardeners, you've heard of Higcote. That is a English house all winter long, and we sell in May. Any questions before we walk on? House, and you usually wait probably 12, 16 weeks, and you might get some roots, and you might not. It's a gamble. Then you upsize into a bigger pot, and then the gamble continues, because then you lose half of those, and you keep half of those. When you, at some point, you bring them down to a temperature usually about 40 degrees, so they vernalize, so they flower for people the next year. So that's where it's hard to grow them in a house. Because normally you don't have a place that's 40 degrees and sunny, and that you can water and things like that. So that's where greenhouses come into play with lavender. You can always try taking cuttings, like now, and shove them in the ground and see if they'll grow stuff. But like I said, I've had luck with one where I've taken a branch and shoved it in the ground, but the easiest way is cuttings. The only one out of the English and the French that produce a seed, that you can plant a seed, which I don't recommend, is the English. French is a sterile hybrid. So there is no seeds to plant. You only get them by cuttings. I have another weird plant that I do here. It used to live down here, and it was really wonky looking from taking all the cuttings. So I gave it a shade respite. So we're going to walk on. We're going to go right here to the other side of this garden and look at some of the different cultivars. Take a trip to the drying shed, and then for those, some people take this tour because they only want to meet my animals up close and personal. That's it, and that's why they're here, is to meet them. We usually people go up and just see the animals, but then humans are humans, and they do stuff that make you go, yeah, no, we got to pull those reins back. We had people put their kids in the field with the horses.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And like we just happened to be there. My husband was there and caught it, and like they're not bad horses, but I always tell people horses are flight animals. And it's the part why I like them. They're cowards. They're total 1,000-pound cowards. Oh my God, that's a chipmunk! And they run, and then they run you over if you're in their way, and then they look back, oh, sorry, that was just a chipmunk. I didn't mean to run it down. I'm sorry. And so you have to be cautious. So we just started and then for the safety, when it gets to 100 degrees, those little donkeys are cute. They'll come out every time somebody comes up, most likely, but they're coming out in the heat. So it's just to be for their safety. And then we added another critter to the bunch this winter. We adopted a miniature horse named Boone from a rescue down in Mechanicsburg. That's it? Yes, Speranza. And I always give them get kicked back on that one because they're a wonderful rescue. Are you familiar? Do you volunteer?
You want to come, right?
What's funny is that was another reason after we people go up there, our horses. Do anybody have horses? Okay, now they eat dirt when they don't have horses, right? They'll put their nose on the ground. I don't think it's nice to do it while you have sunglasses on. But there are different ones, like Melissa Lilac. You can come here and you rub your hands and you'll get some buds and watch so you don't snort them then, because like I almost just did it because I pulled one off in my hand. And you can smell the difference between Melissa Lilac and the next one. And this, if I would have pruned her, we would probably have some more leaf blooms on her, but maybe not because there's some of her in there. But you can see the lighter color of this lavender. And this is an English lavender, but you can rub on that one. And if you do one hand on the English and then one hand on the super when you come back down, super is a French lavender. And you can smell the difference. And you will also get a little sticky because of the oils in the plants. Like your fingers will feel sticky. But this lavender, this Melissa Lilac, is another one that I absolutely adore. I think it's beautiful. You see how pretty? Now, her flowers, when she was blooming the first time around, were a lot more tight and attractive than this. I've been blooming since June. I'm going to throw this out. I don't look as good, but you can see the pretty little flowers. So there is a dozen different types of lavender here, and it's mostly during the season of beginning late June, early July, to show you what they look like. Some of them still have some fresh blooms, like Impressed Purple is a lavender that we have that in the beginning I wasn't so impressed. I'm not getting what you're good for, Impressed Purple. And then I realized last year it blooms at the end of like all the other lavenders. Like we have one we sell called Croxton's Wild. It's one of the first blooms. And then you get Buena Vista. That's an English comes along next. And then okay, you get a Super or a Grosso or an Impressed Purple. That comes along next, and then Impressed Purple. So then, like, if you want lavender the whole time, you just stagger the different types. So you can come down, there's other ones here. There's Colgate, Melissa Pink is down there, and then there's the Provence lavenders. And this is a famous one that does not do well in Pennsylvania winters, but that is the one, if you were going to put French lavender in food, that would be the one you would use. But the funny part about French lavender, Provence lavender, she doesn't like PA winters. She was one of our first 4 cultivars. She was a strip right about in here. Died one winter, all gone. So then we had enough. I propagate a few every year for the diehards that want it. I have about 60 or 70. I put a few new ones in because every year I lose 1 or 2. Like I had one live over this year on its 2nd year in front of the farm store. I had 2 in here and I had this one. Lived, died, lived. They're like literally like almost on the same little strip. I have no idea why, but they did. That's how they work. So it's a trickier one to grow, but it's pretty and it is nice in French. If you're going to cook with it, it's less than some of the camphors and little lulls than the grossos and the supers. So I think that's what makes it a little bit better. So let's go check out the drying shed, and then I can show you some of the stuff here. And when you walk back here by yourself, you can smell some of the herbs, like the mountain mint, the pages. This one I always knew very the smell. And there's one on the walkway back. This mountain mint smells different than any meat you ever smelled. Anybody ever had it? I'm thinking the girl in the back that had new African blue basils. And do you have mountain mint?
I don't. I grow lots of mint. I don't have that.
You should smell that one. You want it because it is a native mint, and bees absolutely adore it. Do I have it? No. But definitely put your hands on it.
Follow me.
Huh?
And there is
Follow me.
I know.
Just rub it
Right.
and smell the difference. It's almost like you can lick this menthol. And if you want to know having factory foods or in the way I guess it's not for the down when you go in the farm, you sit down about a dozen.
Ask him. Okay.
What gardener doesn't do this? This is our drying, okay?
These are pretty.
Sure.
She has some of them for her.
Little petals on them.
You have to be a master gardener.
Yes.
You look at them.
Is that pretty?
So we've already started taking some down. So it's a game. The first round is English lavender. You cut them, you hang them, and then 3 weeks later you take them down, you make room for French. You put them up, you take them down. You put them up, you take them down. So this is a white lavender that was cut past its prime. So what would it be good for? You could put this and take the buds off that are left and put it in sachets because it still smells. It still smells like lavender. But this is a French lavender. You can see how long that is. And this is a rather long stemmed Folgate English lavender. You can see the size difference. And this is probably super dried. It's a little shorter of a bundle. You can see the size differences and such of the different lavenders and the color. Now, I have one, let me see if my groceries. It's a little bit of a different color than the grocer. You see the different shades of purple. So for dried bouquets, you want to get those flowers staying on the stem, you have to cut them before they're all open so that you get all the little purple buds to stay behind. This guy is just using as an example. Almost all the English lavenders are down that are in the drying shed, packed away, ready to be processed to get the buds off of them. Any questions about these? Anybody?
These are the 800, the bunches, the 800 that you put together?
Well,
You mentioned
these
gazebo?
ounces, and I just did it, that's how I know. 13.9. He has a fly mask on. He can't see out of it, but he keeps the gnats out of his eyes. A lot of times people get too used to it. They don't.
What I'll do is I'll leave Boom, come out and meet you guys, and then I'll leave these killers out. The donkey. He does not live with the horses because they're too big. And our veterinarian, our large animal vet, which got him here, and then one day one of the buddies kicks his heels up and has him in the head. So Boom is adjacent. He has no problem with it. Like, he is like his own little dude. Like, yeah, you know. Now, his one bat, I always tell, keep the alley in front of him open, because he'll do these darts and then he runs off. So I try to stand in front of him right now. He has, it's over your one ear when I took the halter on. So he has a fly mask to keep his little bugs out of his eyes, but I'm going to take it off so you can see how cute he is. We did not get him for this purpose. We just got him because I love animals, and he's absolutely, I hope to teach him that we could go to a nursing home. I have to do my research over this stuff and have him visit people. I had a group from an independent living home here 2 weeks ago, and it was awesome. I could walk you down and meet them, and not the donkeys. They understand. If you get bored, Google Amazon Prime Little Man horse commercial.
Yeah.
It was from 2019. And they show little miniature, and the big Frisian, I think they're Frisian horses, take off from it. Like, they're terrified. It is the God's honest truth. Our horses were terrified of him. And so we went through the adoption process, and, you know, you have the right space and this and that. And where's the Esperanza people? And then they... Glad you're not our neighbor. They start at 4:30 in the morning. They literally know the minute we turn the light on to brush our teeth, you'll hear a bray.
Are these the three amigos?
These are the three amigos. This is the famous shot on Facebook. I actually finally got a card made. You'll see, and I should label it. Because people are like, why does she have a card with donkey butts on it? A lot of the...
What do you have the time to do some days? yeah. Type of thing. So, but you still up in the Jim Thorpe area then? Yeah, awesome. Actually, we live on the hill right above where the tool makes. Okay.